Hello, everybody. It's brilliant to be here, and thanks for the introduction, Laura. I'm Susanne Jacobs, and my research and field of expertise in the past decade has been optimal cognitive human performance. My specific field is in trust, psychological safety, and intrinsic motivation. So what does that really mean? It means, in essence, that I look through the lens of neuropsychology to support leaders and teams with practical research-based tools to get the best from their brains. And particularly, I'm interested in what's called cognitive advantage. And of course, underpinning that is about nurturing their well-being. It's not just academic research. I actually didn't enter the field of academia until just over a decade ago. Up till now has been almost, I hadn't realized it, but almost a 30-year business experience, mainly at senior leadership level. So I've done lots of things, leading very large, diverse and geographically spread teams through huge change and restructuring programs. So I suppose you could say I've got the t-shirt on that as well. But in my talk today, I just really want to be able to highlight some of the things that you can consider to create workplaces that are fit for humans and put well-being at the core. And I'd just like you to suspend, just for a moment, your human resources title. I just want you to switch the words around in your head so that you can focus on the role of resourcing humans to thrive. So the key here is that ultimately I'm just trying to move my slide, there we go. Well-being, ultimately, and we know this from the research, well-being, and particularly actually psychological well-being, is the key performance indicator bar none. You've strived to attract and recruit and retain the brightest of individuals to work for you. But if you knock their well-being, particularly psychological well-being and health, even a small amount, there's actually an outweighed impact on their ability to perform, and particularly at a cognitive level. Your people's well-being is the source of your organization's success. And I can't give this talk today without talking about the context in which we're working and will continue to work for some time. We are at what I'm calling a colliding context. We're in an absolutely unique time in our history. The global pandemic has been unprecedented for us all, and it collides actually with so many things. It collides and is a catalyst for and is an amplifier for so many other significant things that are already happening. We've stepped firmly into the fourth industrial age, and with that becomes an exponential shift in technology, which will completely reshape the format of so many roles. There have been huge demographic, attitudinal shifts that will actually shift and change the nature by which we engage and retain and partner with talent going forward. But actually, as COVID-19 becomes less central to our lives, it will pass. But actually, and you'll all know, the legacy, its consequences on our economy, our society, and our mental health will be very far-reaching and very long-lasting. And so really, whenever I'm looking at anything, I always want to understand the full context, the full ecosystem. So I hope this will help you just as a starting point, and to then obviously add all the areas that are relevant for you and the factors that are relevant for you to be able to manage your ecosystem as you create your recovery plans. But one of the things that I really want to do is this unique time gives us a chance to change the trajectory. I don't want to paint a dreadful picture, but I do want us to remind ourselves that actually pre-pandemic, the working world was not in a great space. What's gone, there is no return. There's no return to where we were. What was has gone. But actually, whilst we can take a lot from how we were working, there's a real chance here, a proverbial sort of blank piece of paper to be able to rewrite how we're working. Because just at the end of 2019, we had the engagement stats. These are UK at the moment. I'm just focusing on the UK at this stage. But the Gallup State of the Global Workforce showed that our engagement levels had dropped to 85% disengaged. Now, I didn't believe this when I first read it, but when I understood the figures and delved deeper into them and realized that 67% of that 85% were not your worst performers. They were the people coming in to work, going through the motions. Work was okay. They were unintentionally withholding some energy, their motivation, and also there were sort of an indifference to the organisation. And this norm, actually, which is a global norm, is actually resulting in the UK 73, or is estimated at 73 billion lost productivity. So that's not what we're already doing. This is what we could be doing. And in disengaged environments, there are 100 times more error rates. And Stanford research has just shown us now over their longitudinal research that workplace stress is now the 5th leading cause of death. And that's a frightening figure, based around mainly work-life conflict, long hours, uncontrollable workloads. But what we do know, that every £1 you spend on investing in the health and the well-being of your people, which is the core source of competitive advantage or cognitive advantage, you get a £5 return. So what we really want to be able to do is make the workplace fit for humans, because actually over many years, really since the first industrial age, we've been trying to fit humans into the workplace. But we can organise the workplace through the lens of human performance, such that everything from operations to leadership development supports the conditions that spark intrinsic motivation. And the evidence-based tools and techniques that can help boost resilience, energy, innovation, attention, collaboration, and on and on and on, they are already known. They are practical and they are easy to grasp. But it does take a choice to look at how we're looking at things through a different lens of human workplaces. Because ultimately, what we really need is that as we use the science and we use the frameworks that build human leadership capability to establish trust and psychological safety, which is ultimately the environment that the brain needs to work at full capacity and to maintain our well-being. Ultimately, what we're looking at here is Industry 4.0 needs a Leadership 4.0. Now, I've always been fascinated by this particular slide, which is actually 6 years ago, the World Economic Forum listed the top 10 skills required for this industrial age. Now, I've added focus on the end of this because actually in this information-rich and overwhelming information at some times, back-to-back meetings, the environment which we're working, the ability to be able to focus and to be able to regulate our attention is going to be absolutely vital. But the one thing around every single one of these, as you read down it, is that they are all inherently human. And this common element of human and inherent skills ultimately needs trust. And trust, when I talk about trust, is neurological safety, or sometimes called psychological safety. It requires, and well-being requires this as a primary ingredient. Your brain never switches off. It has a hyper alert system on whether you are safe or not safe. Its primary role is your survival. It is constantly analysing all the data that it gets through all your senses to understand whether you're in a threat state or in a safe state. In a threat state, even mild anxiety that you would feel through your emotions are a signal. You actually start to experience cognitive decline. We all get the different physical symptoms starting to indicate levels of stress. But actually what we really need to be able to do is to create at a primary basis and a foundation of the lens that we're looking through is a safe space, or a psychologically safe space. Because actually, when we're in this space, when the brain looks around itself and trusts the information that's coming in, it trusts its environment, says you're okay, you're safe, it actually floods your body with health-giving neurochemicals. But these neurochemicals also, not only do they feel great, joy, calm, excitement, enthusiasm, all of these wonderful words that we have to describe how we feel, but that feel-good sensation is the seat of intrinsic motivation. Because your brain is perceiving it safe, and it's saying, keep going, keep doing more of this to keep yourself safe. And that's what we really want to be able to do, is nurture this safe environment. And there is a neurobiological formula. I don't have time to go through all of these, and there is more information on this, and there's some follow-up papers after this call that you'll be sent. But what I really want to be able to share here is, this is if you like, a neurobiological checklist These drivers, each one has a survival benefit to them and also an evolutionary benefit to them. They are a foundation for every human being on this planet, irrespective of culture, religion, geography. We need every single one of these in the same way, and in addition to health, water, food, shelter, etc. And the ability to be able to nurture these, to be able to use these as a lens to inform our human resource policies, or I should say resourcing human policies, that it can be, they could be used to measure, to target intervention. You can see in real time what's happening at the level of psychological safety using these drivers. Now, I'm just putting up on the screen in case you want to take a quick screenshot. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but actually these are just some of the definitions around those drivers. The ability to implement them and apply them is actually incredibly simple. They are easy to grasp, but it does take a shift in the way in which we approach leadership, and as I say, human leadership. But the checklist gives us that foundation. It gives us a sense to be able to actually inform what we're doing and where we're taking it. Because when you nurture these drivers, you are triggering our natural reward system. The reward system that at a neurochemical level is highly protective, but also, as I've said, is the seat of intrinsic motivation, and ultimately leads to greater workplace well-being and engagement. And lastly, before I hand back, I've always been I'm absolutely fascinated how we have set up the workplace, actually unintentionally, to work against our biology. We have days full of competing demands. I don't need to tell you, you're experiencing it right now. Back-to-back meetings, constant messagings, the influx and swathes of information, emails, SMS. But unfortunately, we're not actually built to perpetually keep going. Our thinking brain, your cognitive brain supply does not last without refueling and regularly breaking. We just cannot cognitively function when we're tired. And in fact, when you're in that state where you have been perpetually going without any break, by the end of the day, when you are feeling absolutely exhausted, not just tired because you've had a long day, but really fatigued, your cognitive function is actually reduced by about 40%. It's about the equivalent of having a couple of glasses of wine and still trying to make decisions. Because actually, unless we break, unless we learn through really simple techniques how to pulse with our energy, use our energy and manage our energy rather than our time, actually, we never enter what's called the default mode. And this space, often called wakeful rest, this is the only place that actually we have are able to make problem solve, to come up with new ideas, clear decision making. This is the only space that we take on board information but turn it into true learning and wisdom. But it's also the space of recharging. And I wanted to put this slide in particular because actually, as we are just pushing on through, I read some research yesterday that shows that as we're working in this virtual realm at the moment, and most of us, including me, not the relentless travel that we had, actually our commuting time has become work time, and we're actually working on average between 2.5 to 3 hours extra every day. Now that's fine if we are actually in control of our time, but actually what we also need to be able to do is to understand that a longer day doesn't mean necessarily better work. So to conclude, we need to be asking ourselves the right question. Right now, with our proverbial piece of white paper, blank paper to rewrite how we're working, how can our workplace serve us? How can we best resource our people? The pandemic is one season in our lives. It will end. It will be remembered as an extraordinarily difficult time, but also for leaders, it is an opportunity. The steps we take need deliberate and conscious and careful planning. The challenges and psychological risks ahead need really, really great support and awareness, but we have a choice. We can imagine and bring to life a workplace that nurtures the conditions for human performance, to be able to create cultures of trust and true inclusion with well-being at the core. I absolutely firmly believe that organizations that build their workplaces in support of human performance will have significant advantage in this new era of work, specifically cognitive advantage.